Initially, my plan was to create a video about endorsements, and then I realized you can't effectively talk about endorsements without first talking about authenticity. Hi, I'm Angela Chase. I am a radio personality in Dallas-Fort Worth, and I have been in the business since 2005. And I feel like authenticity or being true to one's authentic self is a big buzzword, a big buzz phrase of the moment, but of course it's a concept that's been around since, well, it's been around for a really long time. We've had other phrases for that in the near past, though. Things like being real versus being fake, or being a poser, being genuine, being true to oneself. It all falls into the same category. And being authentic is also just really important to your own sense of self, because inevitably at some point in your career, you're going to say something that people don't like, you're going to get some negative feedback, people are going to lash out at you, and you need to be really secure and comfortable with yourself so that you can handle that in a healthy way. It's also extremely important because you are a leader. If somebody hands you a microphone and says you're free to speak to thousands, if not millions of people, then it is your responsibility to step up in that leadership role. And I've done this myself, plenty of instances of people not being authentic. And so these are just a few tips to sort of help you sidestep sabotaging yourself if a career in radio or media is something that you're interested in. Now, one thing about radio that is unique to other industries is that you do meet and greets with people. I mean, you end up having appearances, you have concerts where your job is to actually talk to listeners, and you're there to represent the station. And one thing that I have seen people do is they sort of inadvertently talk down to people. Now, what they want to do is come across as really friendly and likable, but they end up basically, whenever you see somebody talking to a child and they're like, "Hi, how are you? Oh, your dress is so cute. What did you get for Christmas?" It's annoying. It's annoying when you do it to children. It's condescending, and it's especially condescending when you talk to adults that way. It comes across as fake. It doesn't read well. And even if the person that you are having eye-to-eye contact with seems to be going along with it, there's a pretty good chance that somebody outside, it's just standing 3 feet away, is going to see that interaction and going to be put off by it. So, just talk to people like they're people, or, talk to listeners like they're your boss, somebody that you want to impress, but you also want to be really respectful towards. Another thing I see is when a personality seems disinterested in talking to a listener. And it could be because, they're not making good eye contact, they're kind of looking over that listener's shoulder, or they're just talking about themselves. Whenever you have a listener who comes up to you, there is a chance that they're there just to talk to you, like they love you, but really it's that they love the station. They see you as a representative of the station that they love, as an extension of that. And so it's really important to keep that in mind, that you're an ambassador for the station, but you aren't the station. And another thing to consider is the fact that they listen to you talk all day, every day. So give them the courtesy of listening to them for a change. Another mistake that I see is people being fake humble. A perfect example of this is if you have a specialty show and somebody is like, "Oh, I love your show," and you either pretend like, "Oh, the show's not that big a deal," or you pretend like you think nobody's listening. I mean, that's really obnoxious. I find those situations, the best thing to do is just say, "Hey, you know what? Thank you so much. I really appreciate that you listened to it. I work really hard on it, and so the fact that you enjoy it really means a lot to me." It's sincere, it's honest, the listener feels appreciated, and you're not degrading your own work, the time that you put into it. And, your customer, not your customer, but your listener probably really appreciates the fact that you do put a lot of time into it. And finally, another aspect, and this is on a totally different level that I see as being very problematic, is when people are just flat out dishonest about their lives and who they are. Now, that can be like class passing, for example. Say you grew up in a very humble situation, but you pretend that you came from an affluent background. I mean, that just comes across as pretentious, not to mention this is the internet age. People can pretty easily find out about your origin. So that's something that's going to bite you in the end. And also, if you aren't honest about your relationship status. And I totally get this one First of all, if you're in a relationship, your significant other may not want to be involved in your public persona. If you have children, you may not want to subject them to your public persona, especially if you're in more of like a shock jock format, that type of show. And the other reason, because it falls the other way, is if you feel safer being in a relationship. I mean, I certainly felt that way whenever I was working at a male-oriented radio station in my 20s. I felt much, much safer whenever I had a boyfriend to hide behind. Somebody would be like, hey, do you want to go out? And it's like, oh, well, that's really sweet, but I have a boyfriend. So if I had a breakup, I would still want to hide behind that relationship, but I knew in the end it wasn't going to serve me, that eventually I was going to have to deal with that breakup, and it just was better to be honest. But that doesn't mean that people have a right to know that information. There's a difference between not mentioning something and out not telling the truth about it. So if somebody says something to you about your personal life, about your relationships, getting married, whatever, there is absolutely nothing wrong with saying, you know what, that's my personal life, and I just don't feel comfortable bringing that into my professional life. But hey, tell me, what do you do for a living? You just flip the topic, but just politely but firmly say, hey, this is not on the table for discussion. This part of my life, I'm not open with sharing. Another instance of this was a program director I had who wanted me to talk about sports, and I'm really not a sports fan. I don't follow it. I don't really know the lingo, so I was very uncomfortable with it. So I didn't go out there and pretend that I was some girl who was into sports, because I know that I would inevitably phrase something the wrong way or just get caught. Somebody would think that I actually knew what I was talking about, and then we would have a deeper conversation, and then it would be really obvious. And then I just lost all of my credibility because I pretended to be something that I'm not. I mean, it's the same if somebody says to me, oh, I really love that band, The Perfect Circle. It's like, do you really love them? Because they're actually called A Perfect Circle. And if you don't even know the name of the band, then how can I really trust that you're actually a big fan of the band and you're not just trying to get free tickets off of me? So it's really important to be true to who you are, and there are ways around that. I mean, my program director wanted me to talk about sports, so I would just keep it really simple. Talk about game days, kickoff times, also any human interest stories that might pop up, like, this guy got married, or this one had a baby, or, this one got arrested, because let's face it, that does happen too. Bottom line is, it really is just about being really comfortable with yourself. And think about it this way. Who do you feel comfortable around? People who are comfortable with themselves. If you're with somebody who you can tell they don't necessarily want to have an opinion that somebody doesn't agree with, you don't necessarily feel comfortable disclosing things to them. Am I right? So if you can stand by your opinions, be respectful, and that doesn't mean like intentionally trying to be controversial or being a contrarian, but you also don't want to just go along for the sake of going along, then I think you have a really good chance of having a long career, and your career can also change because our opinions don't always stay rigid and the same. So I think that's where you're going to set yourself up for the most success. Thank you so much for watching. This video is going to be a really good foundation for my next one, which will cover endorsements and how important it is to be authentic and have credibility in the endorsement world. Also, if you want to hear something a little bit more lighthearted, I do have a podcast with my very good friend Daniel. It's called Angela and Daniel. You can download it anywhere you can download podcasts. And if you have any questions or comments or any video ideas, please feel free to leave them down below.